comprised of the brain and the spinal cord. So just as a general reminder, the brain is the largest and most complex mass of nervous tissue in our body. There are 4 regions. The first region we covered in the last lesson. It is called the cerebral hemisphere. We also shorten it, and sometimes you might hear people call it the cerebrum. The next 3 structures are the diencephalon, brainstem, and cerebellum. We are going to focus on these 3 structures today, along with the spinal cord. The other thing that we talked about in the last lesson, so this is a repeat, you already have it in your notes, is that there are 3 major functions of our central nervous system. So keep that in play when we talk about these structures. The first function is it acts as the integration and command center. It helps interpret any incoming sensory information such as pain, light, if we are feeling hot, and then issues any outgoing instructions to muscles or glands that need to either contract or release some kind of hormone or substance. We're going to pick up with the diencephalon. This is also called the interbrain. This is enclosed by the cerebrum, and it sits on top of the brainstem that we will cover next. There are 3 major structures that make up the diencephalon. The first one is called the thalamus. This serves as a relay station for sensory and motor signals going to the cerebrum. So it helps filter out those signals and send them to the part of the brain that needs to process that information. The second major structure is called the hypothalamus. This is generally the one that most people talk about because it regulates and does so much work within our brain. It helps regulate autonomic functions. So when I say autonomic functions, I'm talking about things that are automatic. This means you're sending signals to keep your heart pumping. This is going to be sending signals to cause digestion. This helps maintain homeostasis. For example, temperature, body temperature stays within a certain range. Our water balance within our body, and a lot of other autonomic functions. This also is going to be the location of something called the pituitary gland, and it helps regulate this gland. The pituitary gland is actually part of your endocrine system, and I'm going to ask this on a Schoology, so please make sure you write down the pituitary is part of an endocrine system, and it controls things like metabolism, body growth, reproduction, blood pressure, etc. Again, these functions go into autonomic functions. The third major structure is called the epithalamus. This contains another gland. This is your pineal gland. This, again, is part of your endocrine system as well. It actually helps your circadian rhythms. So when I say circadian rhythms, I'm talking about your body's internal clock, your sleep and awake cycle. So sleep/awake cycle. And this also, like I said, has an endocrine function. When we talk about these 3 structures within our brain, we have our thalamus, which is our circular structure right here. We have our pineal gland, which is part of our epithalamus down below. And then here we have our hypothalamus, which is one of our most important structures for autonomic functioning. And it labels the pituitary gland that's part of your hypothalamus. The next major structure of the brain is the brainstem. This is located below the diencephalon and it actually attaches to the spinal cord. Its major function is to form that connection between the upper parts of our brain and our information coming in through our spinal cord. It is composed of 3 main regions as well. The first region is called the midbrain. This contains visual, so this has to do with seeing or sight, and then auditory has to do with hearing, reflex centers. This also includes the pons, and this is going to be an area that is involved in the control of breathing. When we get to the respiratory system, we're going to talk about how the pons control our breathing rate and tells us when we need more oxygen in our body and to get rid of more carbon dioxide. And then our third structure is called the medulla oblongata. This contains control centers that affect heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, vomiting, and the medulla oblongata is also going to be talked about in our respiratory chapter as well. Here we have these three structures located on the brain. Our pons is going to be our structure right here. Our medulla oblongata is right here. And then our midbrain has several different sections, but this part is mostly considered our midbrain. Again, it's located below our diencephalon organs but above our spinal cord. And the last part of the brain is your cerebellum. This is going to project out from under your occipital lobe. Remember, your occipital lobe is the posterior, or the back of your brain. This is going to control balance or your equilibrium. This is going to work with our inner ears, our eyes, and our skeletal muscles to provide coordinated body movements. And one thing to know about this structure, it is affected if you drink alcohol. And so when you drink alcohol, it hurts this organ, so you do not have coordinated body movements. You tend to stumble, you tend to fall. Here is our cerebellum. It kind of sticks out here on the posterior half. It's more convoluted surface as well. And here it is in relation to the spinal cord. The last thing that we're going to talk about is the spinal cord. The spinal cord is not part of the brain. It is a separate structure, and it is still part of our central nervous system. It extends from the foramen magnum, which is that opening in the base of your skull, and it extends all the way down to your first or second lumbar vertebra. If you remember correctly from our skeletal system, lumbar means our lower back. The function of the spinal cord is to provide a two-way conduction pathway to and from your brain. So information is going to go up to your brain, and then information is going to come down from your brain. It receives information through sensory neurons through our dorsal root. Remember, sensory neurons are going to be to the CNS. That means this information is going to come from pain receptors in our skin, light receptors in our eyes. Is going to send information to our spinal cord, again, through this dorsal root. And I do have a picture coming up. Our spinal cord is then going to interpret that information or possibly send it up to the brain for further interpretation. And it's going to make a decision, and it's going to send information out of our spinal cord through motor neurons. So remember, motor neurons go from the CNS to other organs such as muscles and glands. And it comes out of our spinal cord through something called the ventral root. And these two roots, the incoming and outgoing information, actually fuse to form spinal nerves that serve the rest of our body. So to kind of give you a visual representation, I have this image here. Here is a tack, and it's poking your skin. Our sensory receptors are going to pick up that pain. It's going to send that signal through your sensory neuron, through the dorsal root. So again, blue is going to be our sensory neuron, and then the yellow is our dorsal root. It's going to go into our spinal cord. Our spinal cord has two options. It is either going to make the decision itself and send it out through the motor neuron, or it can actually send that signal up through the structures in your brain for your brain to process it and then send that information back down through your spinal cord, where eventually, either way, no matter if the spinal cord or the brain makes the decision, it's going to send that information out through the ventral root, through a motor neuron, and it's going to take that information to a muscle to give it a function to do, such as pulling your arm away. And that is the end of today's lesson. If you have any questions, please make sure you ask, and I hope you guys have a great day.